to the Mitchell Sentinel podcast. We're coming at you on a very smoky day here at looking over the canyon. And Dad wanted to talk about male bondage today, which
No, not male bondage, male bonding.
well, I didn't really know what you were going to reveal
Yeah.
with your male bondage, so that makes way more sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope. Yeah.
And I just thought maybe you're going to
I
come
wore
out
the,
or something.
I wore the wrong clothes if we're going to go this way. Yeah, well, back in the early 90s, Jack Habecker and Mike Carroll and I, we'd planned a fishing trip. This was probably about 1992. Mike had a boat that I think his dad had let him borrow, and we thought that it'd be good to go over to the high lakes when they opened up over at the Cascade Lakes over on the other side of Bend. And so we planned this trip. So I'm going to read this little story about why I went on this trip. And it wasn't for the fishing per se.
You're more like the scribe, right?
Yeah, right. I was there to document this thing. Yeah. Well, this is called Captain Mike Part 1. Well, the alarm rang at 5:30. I was already awake. I was sleeping with one eye open, hoping the large hand would never reach the 6. It's time for our first annual opening weekend fishing trip. Had to pick Jack Habecker up at 5:45. I must have been early because he came to the door in his skivvies, mumbling he wasn't ready yet, which I could tell by his attire. 6 o'clock found us at Mike Carroll's. We loaded our gear into his pickup and boat. Then we were off. Little Coltis Lake was our destination, and it was reached at 9 a.m. Captain Mike backed the boat down the ramp. It wouldn't be long now. Jack just discovered gas had spilled all over and saturated his boots. He will have to wear his ratty old sneakers. The boat is in the water. Jack and Mike are in the boat. I push off and jump aboard. Captain Mike powers up the powerful 6-cylinder engine. Backing out from the ramp, somehow the engine's prop found a nest of rocks, wreaked havoc to one of the blades. Jack and I were rigging up our fishing rod when Jack remarked his ratty old sneakers was a-feeling wet and they were on his feet. The water kept rising in the boat. Even I, being a non-expert land lover, knew the water was supposed to be on the outside of the boat, not inside the boat. Jack asked Mike, "Did you put the plug in?" To which Mike replied, "Bleep, bleep, bleepin', bleep, bleep, bleep," which must be a nautical term for no. Back to the ramp we sped, well, as fast as a broken prop would take us. On Captain Mike's boat, the plug installed under the outboard unit of the engine, and by this time Captain Mike discovers that he has a rather large hole in his hip waders, about crotch high. So with his shirt off, his left hand pinching off the hole in his boot, and his right hand gasping at the forgotten plug, there he was, bobbing and grasping and pinching and poking, and goosebumps so big it looked like he had bubble-wrapped skin. 7 tries later, he was successful, and off into the lake we went. We trolled the paint off of an assortment of plugs and spoons and fish look-alikes, plus we drowned a few head of pig pen worms, which were worms found in a pig pen. It was fitting that Captain Mike caught the only fish of the day. We can't divulge what he caught him on. We plan to go back and catch another one someday. The only thing I caught was an assortment of weeds, and not being a vegetarian, I threw all of them back. Reeling in, I once hooked Captain Mike's line, and as I was untangling it, his line hooked around the prop of the trolling motor. His reel was a-smoking, and he was screaming for Jack to shut the motor off. And Jack was screaming. He didn't know how. Jack finally choked the motor to a stop while Captain Mike has lost 50 or 60 yards of Super DuPont line. With Captain Mike hanging over the back of the boat, I holding up the motor, we were only delayed about another 20 or 30 minutes. Late afternoon found us making a decision to travel home. Besides, we'd caught all the fish this trip could afford. Captain Mike carefully backed the trailer down the ramp. Jack carefully lined the boat up. I manned the pull rope. Such teamwork. Mike moved the pickup forward. The boat broke from the water. And there for the whole world to see was our catch of the day, flopping in the dirt. The team had forgotten to unhook the stringer. After a little wash off, the fish looked good as new, except for a few drag marks. At last, we were headed for home. 5 miles down the road, we heard this terrible screeching noise. Found a place to pull off, went back to check the boat. It seems the hydraulic hose that holds the motor had leaked and lost some of the fluid out and let the motor drop down. About 2 inches of the rudder had dragged off. Captain Mike, using nautical terms again, only bleeped once this time. I was trying to see the positive side of everything, so I suggested how we could find our way back to the lake easier next time by following the large scratch about an inch deep in the road. This male bonding thing was great. Jack and I are happy to go, can't hardly wait to go again. But we are going to wait until Captain Mike gets his boat fixed and can afford to go again. Now, this was the first trip. Now,
so yeah, this is a whole series, right?
Oh, yeah, there's a whole series of these things.
Now, was this written over the course of what, 3 years?
Well, yeah, the whole series. Well, the series probably goes 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. But you have to understand that Captain Mike is a great teacher, great educator, and a lot of these kids can really thank him because he saved a lot of these kids for a lot of things, and he really does.
And he was an EMT.
Yeah.
Saved a lot of lives.
Yeah. But about mechanical stuff, and even still today, it still kind of plagues him a little bit because he just don't have the touch or the knack or anything like that, and it's a real struggle. It's not that he is going to give up. I tell you what, he's got determination.
Well, I helped him build a new shop this spring, so
he's
still at it.
He's got that done. Yeah. So
Mr. Carroll, if you're out there listening, I'm really glad to help you out there. And, I don't entirely agree with Dad. So.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to get this out there because I know some of his students will really enjoy this little story, and we're probably going to do 2 of them today, and maybe 2 others later on down the line. So you have something. If you like it, you can let us know, and we'll do the other 2. If not, if you think we've humiliated him enough, maybe we could.
Well, I think you just do the whole series today.
Oh, yeah. And not give him a chance.
Well,
I told him we would probably give him a little rebuttal time.
I think you do the whole series now, and we'll have him as a guest here soon, and maybe he could speak to his defense.
Well, it's unfortunate, but I got the other 2 parts of the story upstairs. So.
Oh well, I guess we'll do
the 2 today. Yeah. So I'm going to start off with part 2, and this it explains that this is not the next year. And I just realized that we didn't do them concurrently the first and second year. Somehow we missed. I don't know.
You missed a year?
Yeah. So
okay.
And I explained maybe some of this too here.
Okay.
It's Saturday, April 23rd. It's that time again to join my cohorts, Jack Hawbecker and Mike Carroll, for our annual fishing trip on opening day. I missed last year. I can't remember if I was busy or not invited. After writing the first edition of Captain Mike, that might have been the situation. Wickiup Lake is the destination water that we plan to put the fish on the endangered species list today. We are going after kokanee. It's 7:20 when I roll up at Hawbecker's. He's eating breakfast on his deck, fully clothed. Last time I was early, and he came out in his shorts. Buzzy suggested he come out in the nude this time. I told Jack the only thing would be scarier than that would be if Buzzy came out in the nude.
Buzzy is Jack's wife.
Yeah, and I bet now she wishes she hadn't even mentioned it at all. I realize now that I'm almost 30 minutes early, but Mike is getting ready anyway. Someone left the key on the boat and ran the battery down. We hooked the pickup battery to it and charge it up. Strange pickup drives up, some drummer selling portable rock jacks. Mike buys one just to get rid of him and then throws it on the bank behind the boat. Mike backs the pickup up to the boat. We hitch it up, complete with safety chains and the electric trailer cord. Rods are loaded along with tackle boxes and extra clothes. After our last trip, Jack and I are taking no chances. We got downriggers, we got depth finders, and we're off. Down the driveway, the boat comes unhitched, rolls under the pickup, held only by the safety chains. I guess that answers why they're called safety chains. In the process, it has pulled the electrical cord out of the receptacle. Bleep, Mike uses another one of his favorite nautical terms. Not to be undaunted, we set about the task of repair. It's almost like we knew it was going to happen anyway. Well, 40 minutes later, we continue on our way, and halfway to Prineville, Mike lets out another nautical term. Forgot the white corn for bait. We'll have to get it in Prineville, he says. Mike has to get gas for the trolling motor. We can see the station is not busy. That is until we pull in, then the customers start lining up. Our Captain Mike waits. First mate Jack and last mate me head to the store to secure lunch. Well, we got 6 deli sandwiches, 2 pounds of bean dip, 2 pounds of salsa, 2 large bags of tortilla chips, 2 large bags of cookies, vegetable plate, assortment of candy bars, 6-pack of Snapple, 6-pack of a non-alcoholic brew, to the bakery for 3 frosted Pershings, to the checkout counter for a $47 payoff. The reason for such a big lunch I will cover later. On the road again. Out of Bend once again, Mike omits another nautical term. Forgot the corn again. Now, I might explain right here what we use the corn for. Okay, there's a lot of non-fishermen that might be out there. So we take the corn, we put on a big flasher, what's called a Ford fender. And on the back of that, we hook a little bitty hook with a little bitty spinner and some little fluorescent beads that are behind the spinner. And on that hook, you put 1 kernel of white corn.
Why? What's it to attract the fish?
That catches the fish. I don't know why. When we first tried, I thought, well, this is weird.
Well, I've heard of people using WD-40. So.
Yeah, well, but the flasher tracks the fish up to the little spinner, and I guess it does. And then the corn, they see the bait, and man, yeah, I don't know.
Whatever works.
Yeah, well, okay. Excuse me. We get to Twin Lake store. Finally, Mike buys a can of corn. We arrive at Wickiup Lake at 10 o'clock. That's a.m. We double check to see that the plug is in, back down the ramp, launch the boat. Mike has to park the pickup and trailer a quarter mile up the road, get back, tries to start the boat unsuccessfully. Well, Mike hikes back to get the pickup, jump start the boat. Mike's back from reparking the pickup, and we are finally off. Captain Mike decided we should scout the lake out. That way where the battery would charge up the motor. Or the motor would charge up the battery. As soon as we get as far from the pickup as we can get, we decide this would be a good place to start fishing. Well, Mike shuts the big motor down. We rig up. Mike has to help Jack because Jack didn't bring his wife, so he couldn't use her glasses. Mike fires up the trolling motor. We troll 150 yards and the motor quits. Our captain pulls and pulls and pulls the starting rope. It's no use. Mike didn't use any nautical terms, but I think he was sure thinking them. First mate Jack pulls and pulls. Same result. Mike tries to start the big motor, and the battery won't turn it over. Evidently, that first little thing of charging the battery up with running the boat a little further just didn't work out all that well. Right here is where that big lunch comes into play. If we are to drift healthily for a day or two out here, we won't be hungry doing it. As last mate me, I felt like I should do something because we were both looking at me like I was the only one going to swim for help. I removed the spark plug very carefully because if I drop it, it's going to fall over the bank, over in the lake and sink to the bottom, and we don't have any spare spark plugs. And I'll have to swim again and maybe dive down and try to find a thing, and it's cold out there in this lake. Well, I cleaned the spark plug. Jack gave it a pull or two, and lo and behold, it started. And it ran the rest of the day. The weather semi-cooperated most of the afternoon, except Jack kept reminding how I convinced him to leave his coat in the pickup when the wind came up. All afternoon, bobbing up and down on this lake, drinking a Snapple, a cup of coffee, a non-alcoholic brew, I felt the need to relieve myself. Well, no porta potty, and being of environmental persuasion, that just left an empty Snapple bottle. After doing some quick calculations, I hoped my body had retained all but 16 ounces of which the Snapple bottle held. It was close, but I filled the bottle. My problem now is I had to keep that bottle separate from the real full ones. Well, Captain Mike caught 3 nice fish. First mate Jack caught 2 and bounced the third one off the side of the boat. Only caught 1, and it was the smallest one of the day. I reminded the guys not to let me buy a lottery ticket. Well, we load the boat up and head towards Bend. I dropped Mike and Jack off for Sunday Mass, and I parked up the street and gave thanks for the smallest fish of the day, and the $1 I saved on the lottery ticket, my ability to clean spark plugs, and for having 2 good friends like Mike and Jack. It doesn't get any better than this. When we got to Mike's, I backed my Blazer up to the boat to unload my gear. I also back over Mike's new rock jack laying there on the bank. I told him if I bent it, Mike, just turn it over and I'll come back out and run over it the other way and bend it back. What can I say? It was dark. Well, the postscript of this story is we caught 6 nice fish, but when Mike started to clean them, he only had 5.
Where'd the 5th or 6th one go?
A week later, he found the missing fish in his boat. It was slightly decomposed, and the smell in the boat was really, really bad.
That reminds me of grumpy old men when they were pulling those
Putting
pranks.
the fish underneath each other's seat in the car and everything. Oh yeah,
a good trick.
Yeah, but we had a good time, and I didn't go for the fishing, as you can tell, because I was concentrating on writing a lot of stuff down.
Yeah, you're too busy thinking of how you're going to put this to prose.
Yeah, I also in the same book as I was reviewing this, I came across this poem. Now, in one of the previous podcasts, we had mentioned Howard Ross.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A couple times.
Yeah, a couple times. We did a poem about him, and we did about the mustache thing and everything. But this is now Howard Ross was a smart man, but he was an alcoholic. And my great grandmother, she knew how to pick them. She married 2 men in her lifetime, and both of them were pretty sorry. But they were lovable guys, but they just wasn't worth much. I mean,
characters, but just not worth a hoot.
Yeah, they just wasn't what you call real father figures or husband figures, you might say, either. But Raymond was Howard, Raymond being his son, but he was quite a writer too. But he died early in life because of the World War II. He was killed in that, and I think we covered that too. Maybe if not, we will later on. Anyhow. But Howard, they tell me that sometimes he would be a little bit under the influence, and if he went to a church service, which was very rarely, or a lot of times he would go to the funeral and Howard would kind of help the preachers out, And I remember once somebody told me that he said he was doing this, and the preacher had kind of let it pause, and Howard had stepped in. He says, "We'll now have a song from Old Lady Brady." That's how he introduced her. But this is the one he wrote about the early 1920s at the Missionary Baptist Church during a revival meeting.
So Howard Ross wrote this poem?
He wrote this poem.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And I got it in his own handwriting. My dad had this. I found it many, many years. I never did get to meet Howard Ross. He had passed before I came on the scene. But anyhow, he was quite a gentleman. I use that term loosely too. But he would, and the preachers had a respect for him, but they didn't know what he was going to say sometimes, and that kind of led to problems.
So he must have had some charisma for people to kind of actually respect him a little bit, even though he was a drinker.
Yeah, well, some of the best preachers and leading citizens of the era attended this revival meeting, and Howard Ross evidently must have been there because he penned this poem.
Okay.
Okay, now some of you people out there that were familiar with the Baptist Church, you will maybe recognize some of these names. And remember, I didn't write this. Howard did. Herd and samples came to Mitchell, the gospel for to preach. The soul of every sinner they did try to reach. It was the second evening of the closing hymn. Brown took to the pulpit with a very solemn grin. Dear brothers and sisters, I've labored with you all, but this revival meeting has to end. My wood I have to haul. Well, Sister Mansfield arose, and with a sudden bound, why, the very idea, Brother Brown. We would like to have you with us, but if you cannot stay, we're going to have this revival meeting, and I bet we will have it our way. Then Sister Nelson, she arose, both hands across her seat. She said, Brother Moderator, I'd like to speak. We have to talk to you about the preachers coming to our town. Somehow or another, it never suited you, Brother Brown. Sister Alpha, she got up and told us all, our lamps are in fine condition, and then she starts to bawl. Roy Brown, he woke up and thought he was in school. He said, I will tell you what, I think we ought to try our parliamentary rule. Well, Herd looked at his congregation, which was very small. Then he turned to Brother Sample and said, let him take it all. I will crank up my old Tin Lizzie just as daylight comes, and I'll go back to Sister Seema as fast as I can crawl.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, he knew all the words and all the lines and everything. He had it all pretty well. Well, you got anything else, Robert?
I don't have much to add. I know we've been kind of infrequent of late, but gosh dang it, we've been doing all sorts of stuff, and I just had surgery, and so I apologize to all the folks out there for not getting as many out as we'd like, but it's not for lack of BS, I tell you that much.
And I might say that so far it looks like the surgery was successful.
Yeah, I think so.
It wasn't a lumbotomy, was it?
No, it was, I had what appeared to be a baby's head in a headlock.
Oh,
in my armpit.
Oh, yeah?
A fatty tumor.
Oh, okay. Well, you haven't got the work back on it yet or nothing?
I have not.
Oh, okay.
I need to call the doctor tomorrow and see. But they say that most times they are benign.
Okay. Well, we've got the Oregon State geologists in town the next couple of weeks. I think they're going to be leaving September 6th.
I didn't think they'd probably come out this year, but I'm glad they did.
They're one of the few groups that are running, and I think one of the main reasons that Wheeler County is COVID-free, and we just pray to God that we can stay that way.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Barry Walker. He's running the show up there at the University of Oregon camp.
Yeah, I wish he would come up and play some more music for us when we get going, because he's a great musician. I really like his style.
That's for sure.
He gets you cranked up.
Yep.
And Barry actually told me he really enjoys listening to this podcast, so he Well, that's why we give him a little
Little
plug
shout out there.
Yeah. I came across some other stuff, and some of you past students out there might be listening to this story.
Past students of
Mitchell High School.
okay, Mr. Carroll, or just in general?
Well, just in general,
Okay.
because over the years they invited me to do their junior senior banquet sometimes, some of their athletic award shows,
And speak at graduation.
and speaking at graduation. So I was going through some of that, and I said, gee whiz, this is, 30, 40 years later, it's really funny and good. So we might be doing some of those here later on.
Well, you have been the chief orator of the community for, well, over 70 years probably.
Well, what I always tell people, what I lack in talent, I make up in courage. So
Well, I guess that's all it takes. You got it in spades.
yeah, well, I'd be doing preaching this weekend at the Missionary Baptist Church, so to give our preacher a break.
Oh, well, good.
But he's not going to be in the audience, but he's going to be gone.
He's
so.
going to be in Prineville.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So we're going to have a pretty good group, I think.
Well, good.
So I guess we can wind her down and
Yeah, sounds
head her
good to
out,
me.
and move her on, and may the good Lord take a liking to you.
Oh, amen.